Thank you, Pat. I'm super excited to be here today, and I'm super grateful for the organizers of this event, as well as technology that allows us to be able to have this kind of conversation. I'm going to be talking about how to lead with context, how to lead with feasibility. And I want to tell you a little bit about my story, how I got into management. And after that, I'm going to give you some framework to lead with feasibility. I was a software engineer for many years, and I was building my debugging skills. And there was cloud, it came along, I learned it. There was also observability, I learned it. I was building these tools. And one day, I became a manager. And this is what I thought management was going to look like. All these tools that I already assembled for years, in reality, this is what it looked like. So I had to go to the drawing board, and I discovered that I didn't really have everything figured out. All the capabilities that I built thrown into the builds. And there were certain things I started to notice. I discovered that I was now more accountable than things that I was actually responsible. I was accountable for more areas, even though I was not the one responsible for carrying out those tasks. And that fast feedback loop that you enjoy as individual contributor was no longer fast. So it came in hours, days, sometimes weeks. And in the midst of all this, there were more questions that I had answers to. So teams want to know why we want to build ABC instead of XYZ. And there's this stakeholder who wants to know why everything takes longer than when the company was just 50 people, 100 people. And I need to be able to explain all of this. And I specifically have questions. I want to know what is going on within my team, why certain people are not working together. I want to know what is responsible for the drop in motivation and engagement. And the more I thought of this, the more that I realized that I needed context. I needed to be able to see what is going on, and more of them. And when we look at what we do as managers, irrespective of your roles and responsibility, we only have one objective, and that is to get better outcomes from the people that we lead. Whether from performance review, from coaching sessions you have with your team, everything is to get that group of people to be better, get better outcomes from them. And without feasibility, without understanding the state of your team, it's very hard to influence. It's very hard to lead your team. And when I look at what we do as managers, there are 4 categories. I call them pillars of leading with feasibility, that you need to be able to get quantitative as well as qualitative data to be able to understand your team and to be able to drive change. And that is, you need to get data that will allow you to understand how your team is building what they are building within the time that you have and within budget. And you also need to be able to understand what has already been built. Is it going to run? Will it continue to run? What is the state of things in production right now? In addition to that, you need to be able to get data that will allow you to see if the people, the folks that you brought together, are they engaged? Do they feel happy to continue working on what they are working on? And the last one is the product. How are users, what do they feel about the product you are building? Are they getting values from it? And are they getting satisfaction? And I want to zoom in a little bit on this thing that I want to talk about and how you can get this data. And hopefully there's something for you there. And the one thing that I want to talk about is process. When I talk to people, I hear, I'm not a process person. I don't like it. I just go with the flow. And that is not always true. You always have a process. As long as you do something, the how you do that thing is the process. It might not be well thought or intentional process, but as long as you get something done, you have a process. And I think the mistake we make most of the time is we tend to confuse process with rituals and ceremonies. And that's the difference. So you need to be able to understand how your team is doing what they are doing within the time frame that you have and within the budget. There's always a chance that you don't have all the time in the world and you don't have the budget as well, all the budget in the world. And this calls for a balancing act. And how do you have feasibility into this? To be able to understand how your team is building what they are building on time and within the budget, you need to look at where engineers actually spend their time and things that affect execution. And one of these could be the code base that you have or your architecture. Does it allow your team to be able to move fast? During my time at TIER, we got to a stage we knew that the code base, the architecture of our system, was no longer enough to support our growth. And we had to, can we invest in this thing and maybe split it into smaller microservices to be able to support us at that point in time? You might also need to look at the autonomy that the engineers have. Are they empowered, to be able to ideate, find the solution to the problem they are trying to solve? Or do they need to get the solution from top down? So all of these are areas you can look at to be able to understand how your team is doing what they are doing and to be able to drive change. So how do you keep a pulse on process? One of the most effective ways that I've found is through OneonOne. This is one place you can pick signals of things going wrong or going well. If you have a team that has a process problem, this team might continue to miss deadline. You see, they start development and then there is surprises along the way, and they have to go back to the drawing board again. So by using OneonOne to understand how is it going, where's the problem, how can I support you? Do you think if you consider this approach, it will be better? You are able to pick signals of what is going on, even with your skip level report as well. And the second one is through productivity metrics. So we are historically bad at measuring things in engineering. There have been organizations who have tried to measure developers' productivity, and they did it wrong. It was quite consequential. And there are some organizations who don't measure things at all. But one thing is that certain. Developers' productivity cannot be reduced to a single metric. You need to look across multiple dimensions. And one thing that I found is the Dora Metrics is super powerful. It's able to show you trend. And this trend can help you to ask questions. When you see deployment frequency trending downward, and maybe lead time for changes going up, and that trend might be unusual, it's an opportunity to ask the team, hey, what is going on? Can I help you here? Does it mean we don't have enough capacity to be able to deploy things as usual? Or do we need to invest in the tooling and stuff like this? And the next one to be able to understand process is engineering surveys. Getting qualitative data about the state of things. If you already have metrics coming from maybe Dora Metrics or maybe Space Framework, sometimes they are too general to allow you to be able to capture what is going on across different functions. Backend engineers might be super happy, hey, I can deploy to production every 5 minutes. iOS engineers might be very happy with their release process. Though you might find that Android engineers are not happy. And it could even be the new senior Android engineers who join your organization that are not happy because they've experienced better release process elsewhere. Existing engineers might be happy about the state of documentation because all these decisions were made by them. They have that historic context. But new engineers who are onboarding might not have that historic context. They might see a problem. So by sending regular engineering surveys to understand the state of engineering, you are able to see what is the biggest pain point, what is pushing my team backward. And the second pillar that I want to talk about is the operation. And the reason is you need to be able to get data to understand what we have built, what is in production environment right now. Is it running and will it continue to run? Why is this important? It's because we don't fire and forget when it comes to software. We build it and we maintain it. And you will need to be able to strike a balance between investing in reliability work, or adding new features to the existing system. And when you grow very fast, there are two main indicators that you will know. You see that complexity will start to increase. Maybe your product might be supporting just one use case, but now you are growing, you are adding few use cases, you are adding complexity. And the rate at which you are making these changes will become really high. That is, you are entering new markets, you are acquiring more users. All these come with growth. And at this point in time, a lot of things will start to break down. Communication will start to break down, processes in the bush as well. But one thing for engineering, performance and reliability will go under pressure. And at this point in time, you might find your team taking one step forward and then two steps backward to fix and then put out the fire in production environment. My team was in this state during my time at here. We will recover from one incident and then we move to another incident again. So we were constantly firefighting. And there's something that I realized at that point in time. If your system is going to fail in 6 months, you will know most of the time. You will know that, oh, if we don't do this migration and we continue to grow at this point, this system will not be able to support our growth. And this means most of the time you don't fail suddenly. You start gradually and then suddenly. And this is a good thing. It means there are some key metrics you can get that can allow you to understand the state of your system. And to keep a pulse on operational pillar, one way is to run your services with service level objectives. You need to get reliability metrics from your system. So SLO is more or less like saying, this is how much reliability we expect out of this system. And when you define this, you run your features, your system with SLO, you also need to define what will happen if you don't meet that target. An example could be 99.9% of the time, every user attempt to register on the system must be successful. And if it is not successful, if we go a little bit below this objective, this is what will happen. Maybe we need to stop new features development and make things reliable. And when you do this, you need to make sure you define metrics that directly affect users in their user journey. So with this dashboard, you are able to know how are we doing and how to be able to balance reliability investment versus new features development. The third pillar that every leader needs to get data to be able to lead their team effectively is people. When I hear people say management is about people, and the more I think about it, the more I realize that is true. Management is about people. If your organization is about making pizzas, and you as a manager or a leader, you can make 5 in a day. If you want to scale it to 50, it will be impossible without getting the right people together to work. And I tend to see some of the things we do around this area as we hire the right people, and when they come to the door, we also build them, we grow them. We make sure they are growing, and everything they are doing day to day translate to where they want to be in the future. And these are the easiest part. The hardest part is making sure every single day, these folks, they are happy to stay where they are, and they are interested in building what you are building. This is what I call retention. And it can be very difficult to manage. And way to drive retentions is by getting data from key metrics that determines if an engineer is engaged or not. And one of them could be autonomy. Can engineers decide to an extent how they want to do what they are doing? Can they decide where they want to work, maybe how they want to do what they are doing in a way? And the second one, purpose. Do they really connect to the purpose of your organization? I know during hiring managers interviews, we usually check, what's your motivation? Why did you apply to this company? But it does not have to stop there. We need to keep checking along the way. Have they fallen out or do they still believe in our mission? And do they believe that the direction you have set as a leader is taking the company into the right direction? And another one could be a growth. Do they see a path for them to grow? Can they say, you as their manager, you actively support their growth and you want to see them growing? And do they believe if they put in their best work, they will be recognized for it? And another key part is compensation. What is their opinion around how they are compensated for the values they bring on the table? Can they have constructive conversation with their managers about pay and challenging work? Can they come to the office and say, oh, there's nothing to work on, or I don't have anything to work on, I don't feel challenged by what I'm doing? So all these play a role in determining whether an engineer will be happy building what they are building and staying. And how do you have visibility into some of these drivers? One of the best ways that I've seen is by performing engagement checks through Picons or a number of tools that can allow you to do that. And if you do this once a year, you are doing it wrong. It doesn't take engineers 3 months to find a new job. So you want to make sure you are checking this constantly, maybe once in a month or every quarter, to know how do they feel about the changes we are pushing right now. Do they feel it's okay? And then you can actively address it. And the fourth pillar that I want to talk about today is products. It is possible for you to have engaged team and engaged team, building what they are building with all the scalability, reliability, performance you can think, excited. And you might even have the most optimized process. And at the end of the day, your customer is just sad. They are not happy. And this can happen if you are building the wrong thing. So you need to be able to check my team, what we are building. What is the customer perception about what we're building? Are they getting satisfaction from it? Are they getting values from it? And one of the few frameworks that I've seen around this is Google Earth framework. Rather than relying solely on business metrics, revenue metrics, you need to actually get metrics that translate to how users are experiencing your product, what they think about your product. You might want to look at how happy are they. Do they find your product very useful, fun to use? Are they happy when they use it? And you might also want to look at engagement. How do they interact, engage with your product? Do they find values in it? Do they move from one screen to another? Do they try the new features you are releasing? And also adoption. Are users completing onboarding process to become regular users? Is there a friction around there? And you also want to look like retention. What is the percentage of your users that are renewing their subscriptions, that are coming back to use your product? If you are seeing that a large percentage of your users are coming back, it's an indication that they are getting some values from it. And finally, you always want to make sure you don't do anything that is going to mess up what users are trying to do. Are they achieving that thing that they want to do with your product as fast as possible and easily? So if you see this thing trending down, this could be an indication that you are doing something wrong. And to bring my talk to a close today, and if you're going to take one thing from this talk, I want it to be people, product, operation. If you are a new manager or someone who is transitioning, you want to make sure you have a framework that will allow you to be able to know the state of people in your team. What is their motivation level? What is their engagement level? Are they happy? Are they happy to stay? And you also want to know, you want to make sure you get data from the product as well. What do users feel about the products you are building? Are they getting values and satisfaction from it? And you want to look at process from ideation to the point that we put something in production environment. Are there any impediment around the way? What change can you drive? And the last one is the operation. What you have built, what is the state right now? How can you balance building new features to bring in new users versus making existing features reliable? And finally, numbers don't tell the whole story most of the time. You need to support the metrics you are seeing with personal interviews. So if you see maybe lead time for changes going higher, rather than say, hey team, why is this going really high? You want to talk to your engineer and say, what is the problem here? How can I help? And when you see users churning, they are not coming back to renew subscription. Rather than say, oh, you need to make sure you interview your users. Try to understand the problem, the pain point exactly. And another thing that you need to look out for is that when you see a metric, especially around the engineers or your people, that don't meet expectation, use it as a coaching opportunity. Instead of saying, hey team, you have to meet 20 deployments a week or a day. If it is going down, you are not performing. You need to look at them and say, team, what is happening around here? This is the reason why we need to make smaller, frequent changes to production environment. How can I help you? And finally, start, tune, and refine. Thank you.